There we go. Welcome, everyone. Connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR. On Twitter, follow us at Reading by Third. And on LinkedIn, follow us at Campaign for GLR. Please use the hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. I'd like to take a moment before we begin to acknowledge our enterprise and programmatic funders, as well as our individual donors. Your support not only allows us to hold these vital conversations, but also helps us create meaningful opportunities to share insights, foster connections, and build the CGLR community. Thank you. As we get started, I have just a few housekeeping details to share with you. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select everyone so that we all know who is here, and feel free to share your thoughts and insights throughout the duration of the webinar. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate the last portion of the webinar to respond to those questions you post, and our panelists will be typing out responses throughout the conversation. The webinar is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook. A link to the recording, as well as any slides, bios, and resources, will be emailed on Friday to all who registered. And finally, we'll be posting a brief on-screen poll during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. And before we get started, I just wanted to turn your attention to highlight some of our upcoming webinars that we have. Later this afternoon at 3 p.m., we hope you'll join us for the continuation of our Decoding NAEP series to hear directly from state chiefs and gain insight into how states are promoting early school success for young learners. On March 25th at 12:30, we'll be hosting a Crucible of Practice salon that will discuss how Georgia is working to change and strengthen programs for young people throughout the state by investing in quality supports, strengthening systems, and bolstering technical assistance. And later that afternoon at 3 p.m., and the following week on April 1st, we'll be having a CGLR mini-series that is exploring the impact on children of policies and proposals, with our first session looking at proposed shifts to the U.S. Department of Ed, and the second looking at the impact of policies and actions related to accelerated deportation. And lastly, for all of you here with us today, and for those focused on our funder to funder conversations, I'm excited to share that we have locked in our April funder to funder session, which will fall on April 15th. And this will, this will discuss how national and local funders are collaborating to advance early math. Registration links and more information for these sessions will be posted in the chat box now, and we hope you can join us. And joining you now is Sarah Torian, Chief Learning and Engagement Officer with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you, Sierra, and welcome everyone. I am so glad that you could all join us for today's Funder to Funder conversation, featuring a powerful new approach designed to harness the power of local leaders with support from a group of national partners to create the kind of communities that we all want to see. Communities where every child has the resources they need to thrive. The Campaign for Grade Level Reading was founded with a belief in the power of local knowledge, energy, imagination, and relationships to drive change for children growing up in economically challenged, fragile, and otherwise marginalized families. And so we are delighted to see the Early Learning Nation Collective take root and begin to scale its work into more states and more communities across the country with initial support from the Bezos Family Foundation, a longtime supporter of the campaign. The ELN Collective represents an opportunity for a wide range of funders. For the state and local funders who are investing in the on-the-ground action and collaboration in the 350 plus communities that make up the CGLR network, and for those funders who are supporting child and family success across the nation. We have an action-packed agenda today in order to showcase how the ELN Collective, a collaboration of 7 national partners, is fostering local decision-making with support from the Bezos Family Foundation. So I'm going to jump right in to the conversation and begin introducing our incredible panel of panelists, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. But please note that I'm sharing very, very, very short bios for each of them, but I'll be dropping their full bios in the chat, and I encourage you to check them out there. Welcome first to Sherry Brady, who serves as the Vice President and Chief Program Officer at the Children's Defense Fund, advancing CDF's vision of a nation where marginalized children flourish, leaders prioritize their well-being, and communities wield the power to ensure they thrive. Welcome to Amalia Chamorro, who serves as the Director of the Education Policy Project at Unidos US, the nation's largest Hispanic civil rights and advocacy organization. Also happy to welcome and introduce Kelly Epley, who serves as the Director of Early Learning at the Hunt Institute, supporting local elected officials working to establish their communities as national leaders in early childhood education. Welcome also to Esther Hernandez, who serves as Senior Program Analyst for the Center for the Study of Social Policy, engaging with community leaders and parents to promote children's early learning and development. Welcome also to Kimberly Robson, who serves as the Chief Operating Officer at Save the Children Action Network, the advocacy arm of Save the Children, where she leads efforts to build bipartisan support by lifting up community voices to make sure that every child has a strong start in life. Welcome also to Tanja Rucker. Tanja serves as the Director for Early Childhood Success at the National League of Cities Center for Leadership, Education, Advancement, and Development, also called LEAD, where she drives the creation and refinement of a strategic early learning agenda. Welcome to Shidhal Singh, who serves as the Executive Director of the Early Learning Lab at Start Early, where she works to advance early childhood learning by co-creating with communities to tap into their existing knowledge and using technology to scale impact. And finally, welcome to Megan Wyatt, who serves as Managing Director for early childhood at the Bezos Family Foundation, whose mission is to invest in the science of learning and the experiences that youth from prenatal to young adulthood need to pursue their path for success. That's a lot of panelists. Who's going to be the person who guides us through today's conversation as moderator? I'm delighted to welcome and introduce Angela Garcia. Angela serves as the CEO and owner of Toy Box Early Learning Centers in Las Cruces, New Mexico, a 5-star nationally accredited program with 2 locations serving approximately 300 children. A passionate advocate for the children and families of New Mexico, Angela also serves as co-chair of the Early Learning Nation Collective Steering Committee, the entity that serves as the beating heart of the ELN Collective. The steering committee guides the collective by setting the strategic direction, advising on alignment, and championing the work. So we are beyond delighted that Angela is able to join us today as the moderator for this conversation. Thank you so much, Angela. I'll pass it over to you now.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah, and thank you for the campaign of grade level reading. We're so excited to be here today. I am honored to be here today. I love talking about ELN. Collectively, this group of national organization partners represent entities who have formal and informal collective power, which touches everyday lives of children and families across the United States. Their credibility and reach and expertise opens doors to engage with caregivers, educators, advocates, elected officials, and other local leaders like myself. No other group of national organizations has their respective and collective standing in communities, from rural areas and villages to towns and major cities. I'm excited to first welcome Ms. Megan to have a conversation with us. Ms. Megan, to set the stage for today's conversation, can you tell us a little bit about the Bezos Family Foundation and their commitment to early childhood, including how the foundation prioritizes listening to community?
Yes. First, thank you so much, Angela. It is a complete privilege to be in conversation with you today. I'm also deeply grateful for all of those who joined. I'm just watching the chat and I'm amazed. To answer your question, through the generosity of our co-founders, Jackie and Mike Bezos, we've been funding early brain research at leading institutions for nearly 2 decades. And we have found these insights from the research quite inspiring. The fact that babies' brains are born wired to learn, that they're capable of learning any language from the moment of birth, and that quality interactions, relationships shape development at an astounding rate. I think it's 1 million neural connections per second. And Angela, as a childcare provider in New Mexico, you see how those quality interactions shape development every day. And you know what a difference having an early childhood program, what a difference that makes to families. So the research is clear. You know this as a practitioner, and it's the reason that we have made the first 5 years such a major focus of the Bezos Family Foundation's work. Just to illustrate it really briefly, we have a strand of work that is about parents and families starting before birth with community-based doulas and prenatal care, fostering parent leadership. We have a set of priorities that are tied to professional preparation and compensation for the care workforce. One of our co-founders, Jackie Bezos, uses the term brain builders, not babysitters. And so through this work over the decades, we have seen the value of community leadership. And that is because place is such a critical factor in kids' life trajectories. If you look at research on economic mobility, education attainment, for example, it's down to the zip code level because it really is at that community level where the formal and informal systems come together. Can I find a great childcare provider? Is there a library with books in my language? Is food getting to families with young children who need it most? And so the work of the ELN Collective is about investing in local leaders who can bridge and work across those formal and informal systems in service of local priorities. And it came about because we heard directly from folks in the field that there was a need and an opportunity for more investment in local leadership and local coordination. So very much field-led and inspired from the very beginning.
I love that. Baby brain builders. I love that. So, as you mentioned, you kind of touched on a little bit how it led to this early learning collective. I understand the efforts build on some earlier investments in tools and resources intended to ensure more communities have 4 essential building blocks that help young children and their families thrive. You kind of talked that holistic a little bit in your conversation right now. Can you shed some light on those earlier efforts and how they really set the stage for the broader collaborative approach?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, the work truly was responsive to what we were hearing was a greater need for community leadership. And it began, if you can believe it, almost a decade ago with a smaller group of stakeholders, many of whom are actually on this call today, which is amazing. And 2 of the 7 organizations that we will soon hear from who were already supporting local early childhood tables and systems both inside and outside government. They had that local credibility and knowledge that the campaign talks about. So these partners, the Center for the Study on Social Policy and the National League of Cities, through a little bit of additional support from the foundation, were able to formalize a network. Not as big as the campaign for grade level reading, but surely united around a shared vision and a common goal of early learning communities. It was upwards of 30 cohorts participated. I will personally never forget getting to participate in some of the convenings. And what you would see is groups from rural Nebraska, groups from mid-sized cities in Maine and Michigan, exchanging ideas with larger metropolitan areas, San Francisco, Milwaukee. And out of this work came a set of tools and resources that were free and scalable. There was an early version of the building blocks framework, an assessment that community stakeholders can use to take inventory of their community strengths, create an action plan with really clear priorities for early childhood investment. We'll hear Esther from CSSP talk more about these tools, but they were very much co-created with parents and providers from the earliest iteration. And I think the biggest challenge at that time of those early days was the capacity to meet the demand from other cities and counties that wanted to join. that wanted to contribute, receive the TA, to really be part of something bigger. And so in early 2000s, what of an auspicious time, we engaged in some additional field research. We worked with IDEO.org. They're a human-centered design firm, and we wanted to answer the question, can this partnership grow? You know, I won't go too much into the process, but it was definitely the early days of Zoom and COVID. And we were able to speak with stakeholders across the country. And we heard loud and clear that place absolutely matters. The tools, the scalable tools that I mentioned, they were really important. They had potential, this idea of a shared vision, also a lot of potential, and that we needed to equally invest in the people who who comprise these local initiatives, to really make sure that there was representation. So by representation, I mean parents of young children, childcare providers, other community leaders whose voices can often be sidelined, with a true cultural, linguistic, racial, economic diversity at the table, because communities are comprised of individuals. I want to just acknowledge, Angela, something you said to me maybe a year ago. We were having a conversation and you described what it felt like to join as a steering committee member, that was a step up moment for you as a provider. And so a big part of this work is helping more local leaders step up and preparing local decision makers to shift and share power.
I love that, Miss Megan. And thank you for mentioning that, because it's been about a year now that I've worked with this group, and I have never been more welcomed in a space to be authentically myself and bring my expertise from, being a provider. I'm second generation. My mama did this when I was little, and, and here I am doing it in this space. And so I love that about this group. You touched on a little bit, Miss Megan, about, there just being a need for people wanting to really join this. Like they really, wanted to be a part of this. And so what most excites you about this work now that it's scaled and poised and ready to expand and move into communities?
Well, when I talk about things I'm excited about, I can get going. But I will try to be brief so that we can actually hear from the 7 organizations. But really, I'm thrilled that it has grown from 2 to 7 with an unprecedented level of collaboration. I'm excited because the governance structure includes the representation from remarkable individuals such as yourself, who are already leading and serving in their communities in a variety of ways. I've seen a number pop in the chat. Christy Richardson, I see you in South Carolina. And so going forward, I think we are really poised to increase the level of investment and support that goes directly to communities. So this is more technical assistance, programmatic offering, convening, but also funding. We'll hear more about this, but early in 2025, a local action fund was launched. It has a participatory grant-making model, so the foundation did not have decision-making in the allocation of those funds. And we have seen those grants be real accelerants for the community and leaders' efforts. So I think we're at the beginning of what can be a very powerful model.
I love that. And I'm so excited because I think now you really set the stage to bring all these amazing organizations into the conversation. So I know, Miss Megan, we're going to touch base with you in a little bit, but I would like for us to officially welcome everybody on camera, all our national partners. As I just discussed with Miss Megan, in her opening comments, each of your organizations play a unique and important role in ensuring that all young children prenatal to age 8 have equitable access to care, education, and the support they need to thrive within their communities. But part of the secret sauce, right, of Early Learning Collective is how you are connecting and collaborating with each other in a way that makes the whole, it makes the whole greater than the sum of each individual parts, right? So I'd like to provide a window into the secret sauce. what works and how this works in action by inviting each of you to briefly tell us about your organization and your unique role in and how you are working with the collective, and give an example of how you're collaborating with the other national partners to better serve communities and local leaders within them. I'll start with Ms. Esther from CSSP. Ms. Esther?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Angela. The Center for Study of Social Policy brings a strong commitment to advancing equity and justice in early childhood systems. One of the key ways that we contribute to the collective is through our early learning community cohorts and parent leadership cohorts. We provide coaching, tools, and funding opportunities to help local leaders and parents develop action plans that improve early learning opportunities in their community. In the last year, we facilitated learning cohorts reaching 17 communities, helping them develop these early learning community action plans and community projects. We worked with them, and we also encouraged community teams to apply for the collective's local action fund as well. As part of our role in the collective, CSSP has also developed an updated early learning community action guide and digital assessment tool, which Megan mentioned earlier. This is a very rich resource that's designed to help communities focus their efforts around 4 key building blocks. The four key building blocks for early learning communities are a commitment to making early childhood a priority, quality services that work well for young children and families, neighborhoods where families can thrive, and policies that support and are responsive to families. The Community Action Guide assessment tool will be shared in the chat, and the building blocks for early learning community framework. Both have been used by the national partners here within the collective and have been weaved into multiple programmatic offerings, including the Children's Defense Fund's Power Building cohort and the National League of Cities City in Actions cohort.
I love that, Ms. Esther. The building blocks were those early resources, right, that have been adaptive and grown through all these years of investment from these amazing organizations. Ms. Kimberly, Save the Children. Can you shed some light on your guys' part in collective?
Absolutely. Thanks, Angela. And thank you all for being here today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Save the Children's U.S. Program Division and our advocacy arm have a mission to ensure all children have a healthy, strong foundation to thrive as learners and in life. Our U.S. programs work is centered around some of the most rural and under-resourced areas where economic challenges are intensified by limited resources, geographic isolation, and stubborn disparities. In the collective, our strong relationship in rural communities are extending our partners' reach into new geographies while bringing meaningful opportunities to our networks. In addition, our Rural Child Care Network is offering valuable resources and training opportunities to more than 2,000 providers across the ELN network and beyond. In addition to our program's work, Save the Children's advocacy arm, Save the Children Action Network, engages community members, building their leadership and advocacy skills to advance campaigns for early childhood education. SCAN hosts local leaders, including parents and caregivers, are helping to advocate changes in early childhood education policy. Within the collective, SCAN offers a sustained family engagement and advocacy network for local leaders to join. A unique role we've played in the collective is leveraging our deep relationships in the rural communities to recruit on behalf of other national partner organizations, ensuring partner opportunities reach rural communities and rural leaders. In addition to recruitment, we strategically layer our technical and training expertise to enhance the programmatic experience of local leaders. Now, CSSP just spoke, but one example of where this has worked is last July, they were launching their early learning community cohorts with a focus on rural communities. And our Save the Children staff were able to spread the word, help with recruitment. In West Virginia, SAVE staff raised the opportunity with key partners, and they applied and became an early learning cohort. This group met regularly with facilitation from CSSP, and as part of this process, that cohort then began to carry out the assessment using the tools provided. But along the journey of this, they realized there were significant barriers for participation for local stakeholders, including parents and caregivers. And so to address those barriers, the cohort sought funding from the Early Learning Action Fund, Early Learning Network Action Fund, which we've spoke about, what Megan spoke about. And the cohort proposal was selected, providing funding for the stakeholder meetings and town halls and those barriers that were preventing the local leaders from participating. Again, this is just one example of the partnership that can occur, both reaching new audiences, but also addressing the barriers that often face local leaders from engaging in this really important and critical work.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kimberly. I was going to say Miss Kim, but Miss Kimberly in this space, right? But no, I appreciate all of that. I actually have had the honor of working with SCAN in my rural communities. So I definitely value what Save the Children brings to this group. And I know you touched on, that participatory grant making aspect. So who better to go next than Miss Sherry from CDF?
Hi, thank you, Angela. Thank you, everyone. I'm Sherry Brady, and I'm representing the Children's Defense Fund. The Children's Defense Fund is civil rights organizations that focus on building community. Our mission is to build communities so that children can grow up with dignity, hope, and joy. We think that's so vital that childhood is respected as as a place where children get to thrive in that space. So CDF's offering as a part of the ELN Collective is a twofold. So I'll start with our programmatic offering, which is our leadership and advocacy collective. Esther talked about it as power building, and that is the central tenet of the work, is really thinking about how communities can build power to be able to engage in systems to create the changes they want to see for their community. CDF believes in centering the voices of the constituencies who are most impacted. We believe that those who are closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. And in this work, it's really about building a leadership cohort that has parents and caregivers, it has local community leaders, it has faith leaders who are a big part of our constituency as well as anchor institutions in communities, especially marginalized communities and communities, Black and Brown children, Black and Brown communities. It's important that they are really thinking about how they're analyzing power in place and understanding where their entree points are into community change and systems change. And so that's what our leadership collective focuses on, is really thinking about how they are identifying a challenging problem in their community, how they're thinking about where the change agents and change places are from traditional power to community power, and understanding power is a really important piece to understand and analyze. So that is the work that we're doing, and really building cohorts in places. It's starting with skills development and leadership development focused on the individual, to then build, to create collectives, to create ways that they're getting together and building networks for power to organize, to move to systems change, to what we want to see our early learning nation look like in the places where we're focused and across the country, and what that looks like. So that's the focus of the work that CDF is doing from the programmatic side. It really fits into our organizing model and that kind of work. The other side of the stump that we're doing, that's sort of a bit of a collective offering, people have mentioned it, which is the Local Action Fund, which is a participatory grant making model that really is focused on community leaders deciding where this money goes in community to create the innovation and the change that community leaders want to see on the ground. CDF doesn't. All that CDF did was really train people around the model of participatory grant making, giving them a history and understanding philanthropy and understanding the role of community grant making in that space to democratize grant making and to actually own and think about how resources go, because that's an important piece of creating change in place, understanding where resources are and how local leaders are moving resources there. So we have a panel of a grant making team that is only local leaders. We do a training. They get we released an RFP that we just released, and we can make sure that we get a copy of the RFP and the materials that Sarah's sending. And they review them, they have a rubric, they discuss, they decide yes, nay, they decide yes or no, and really, really thoughtful about how they do it. The Family Foundation, or any foundation that is putting into this, doesn't get a decision, doesn't get to decide. And so it's really a powerful thing to actually see them get together and talk about the change that they want to see in their communities, and think about the organizations that they might know or might not know that are on the ground that are doing these really important things. And the piece of this too is to build on the local offerings that all of us are doing on this call to really allow them to dig deeper into that, to have an avenue into those places if they don't, and build their capacity and community capacity to be able to engage. So that's kind of what CDF is doing in this. We're very excited to be a part of it, and we really believe that if we are not unlocking the power of the folks on the ground, we are not creating the change that we need to see in the world.
Man, I every time I talk Ms. Sherry, I'm like, okay, let's go work. Let's do it. Thank you so much, Ms. Sherry. Next we'll go to Start Early, Ms. Chiton.
Hey, thanks so much. And first of all, I just have to say that this is such a tremendous opportunity to align our work and strengthen our impact in community. So I really want to thank Megan and Bezos for bringing us all together to do this work. It's been a journey. So Start Early does a lot. We're a national organization. But for the collective, we're really focused on our local systems building work. So really ensuring that local community-based early childhood systems are strong, comprehensive, equitable, and responsive to the needs of families locally and providers. And so as part of this initiative, we are offering a couple of different programmatic offerings. One is our family-centered design program, which is about building the capacity of local leaders in local communities to work with families to use tools and strategies of human-centered design to elevate family and community voice in the way that they're designing their systems. We also offer customized consulting to meet the unique needs of local leaders in these communities, and the development of comprehensive local systems maps. And to kind of tell a little story or give an example of a collaboration in how this has really impacted our ability to do our work. One of the places, the communities where we're creating a systems map is Sacramento. And so we're currently partnering with the Sacramento County Office of Education to build this. And systems mapping is it's a pretty hardcore engagement, to be honest. It's a deep engagement in a community to really understand comprehensively where all of their early childhood systems data sits, and to put together a picture of what this looks like. And so, it's our lead partner is the County Office of Education, and they're super, but this has to be a team effort because, as we all know, in our somewhat fractured early childhood systems, like data lives in lots of different places and it sits with different organizations. So last September, the National League of Cities held a convening for all of their California cohorts, and they invited Start Early to participate. We were able to send 2 people. I was so fortunate to go and to sit with the Sacramento cohort over the course of a couple of days to meet a ton of local partners and to really understand from their point of view, their goals for their system and, their action plan and what they were hoping to do. So that was a tremendous opportunity for us to deepen our engagement with partners in Sacramento. And, now we're working with them to build the systems map. So just an example I wanted to share of how we're coming together programmatically.
I love that. And you actually are touching base on who's going to speak next. So I think it's perfect for Ms. Tanja from NLC to talk about their work.
Thank you, Angela. I am delighted to be with you all today. Special thanks to the Bezos Family Foundation for bringing us all together to do such important work during such a critical time in our nation, and to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading for creating this space so that we can share the complexity and all this amazing work that's taking place. Last year, the National League of Cities celebrated a century of work of strengthening cities. Today, we represent nearly 3,000 cities and are the top resource and advocate for local governments across America. We are the go-to organization for municipal governments, and I work in the division that supports our elected officials and senior city staff in supporting strong policy and programmatic agendas for young children and families. We all know that local government plays a unique role in the lives of residents and the communities across the nation. As our federal government is in retreat, more and more responsibility will fall upon the shoulders of state and local leaders. I guess our members are saying, like, no one is coming to save us. And honestly, there is a lot at the local level where there's amazing talent, and local leaders are ready to meet the challenges of today. So we're fortunate to be working this part of this collective with 6 amazing national organizations who are passionate about young children and who have deep ties and credibility with community at the very grassroots level. Collectively, we have an amazing opportunity to meet the needs that we're really critically facing right now. NLC has a decade of setting tables, that are led usually by municipal officials, where informal and formal power can come together to create better conditions for the quality of life for communities. And we are honored to be in this work, to be part of this collective. NLC serves in 2 capacities here. We have a programmatic agenda, but we also serve as the backbone role in partnership with our friends at the CDF, Children's Defense Fund. NLC is responsible for managing the collective governance structure through which the steering committee, which Angela co-chairs amazingly, and we are able to, the steering committee is comprised of national partners and local leaders who come together to provide strategic oversight and guidance and really keep us honest and weigh in on the direction the work is going and to provide that real lived experience feedback loop that we need at the national partner level to make sure that we are being responsive to what's happening on the ground. We also oversee and stand up the work groups that are needed, data and metrics. So whenever there's a need, we can stand up a work group. There's a combination of local leaders and national partners who come together to work collectively to help us overcome challenges and to meet the needs of the collective. We also manage the communications aspect of the work through a firm that we are excited and just thrilled to work and partner with. This firm is responsible for collecting all the stories, getting connected to the greater the universe across the nation and making sure that we are communicating in real time the amazing work that's happening. And additionally, we also commune the community of practice. And that's where all of the partners come together to align their TA. It's important that we leverage and pull on all levers where we can better align our work. As Angela noted in her opening, we are much better at doing things together versus coming in as an individual organization. So this community of practices is really an important space where we share what's working. And we also must stay honest and make sure that we are entering communities respectfully and we're taking in the context of all the things that are happening. So NLC in the programmatic arena, our secret sauce is technical assistance, and we set strategic planning tables that are led by municipalities. Over the past 12 months, we have convened 25 one-on-one coaching sessions with our city teams, 7 joint peer learning sessions, and 11 monthly touch points where we've been able to fold in and bring in our amazing partners. CSSP, Children's Defense Fund, has been stalwarts in our coaching virtual sessions where they're oriented to the community, the building blocks, the power shifting model. We're so fortunate to have partners to join us in those spaces where we do that strategic planning and that work. And then we're able to bring folks together in person. We've had 2 in-person innovation summits in Louisville, Kentucky and Sacramento, California, all attended by all of our 10-city cohort teams. And we have had tremendous support from our partners in Louisville. We had the CSSP, Start Early, and Unidos join us in real time. And as Shital noted in Sacramento, our friends from Start Early, Unidos, and Save the Children were with us. Our partners are sitting at those tables and they're working diligently to make sure that their expertise and that all the work that their organizations can show up and be brought to bear in those city-led plans. So we're excited about the partnership and our ability to virtually connect and align as well as in person. And we've already seen, as noted, the impact at city teams to be able to really move the needle and come together. We've had Houston and Louisville, Kentucky to come together. Cities can get competitive, but they also like to learn from each other, and we see those bonds taking place. So we're excited about the work. 4 of our 10 cities received local action fund grants. And one great example is the city of Knoxville, Tennessee, was able to leverage the local action fund dollars for the city to leverage and tap into general funds to create and hire an early childhood initiatives manager at the city level. So we've seen the leverage of the resources really coming to bear and changing the governance structure of what's happening in the city of Knoxville. So much more examples, but that's just a little bit about how NLC and the work that we're doing, and we're just really grateful to be part of this amazing team. Angela.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tandra. No, you guys are all the things. I know personally as a local leader in this group, I appreciate you guys as the backbone team. You guys, Miss Elizabeth and Ms. Tandra, you guys go above and beyond to make sure that we not only understand, but we're included and feel heard in all of these spaces. So we thank you guys so much for that. Next, we have Miss Kelly from the Hunt Institute.
Thank you, Angela. Hi, I'm Kelly Edley, Director of Early Learning with the Hunt Institute. I want to just say first that I am appreciative of being here with all of my colleagues on the other national partner teams. This is really amazing work, and I'm very fortunate to get to work with all of them. The Hunt Institute is the legacy of our namesake and founder, Governor Jim Hunt, who served as an historic 4-term governor in North Carolina and is known as our education governor. So our work at the Hunt Institute builds on his legacy, and we work across the country with elected leaders to provide resources and opportunities to engage on key issues across the full education continuum. And that includes the prenatal and early childhood years through higher education and workforce entry. So through the Early Learning Nation Collective, our early learning team launched the inaugural cohort of the Early Learning Nation Policy Fellows. We recruited over 100 mayors, city and county council members, school board members, and other locally elected officials who have some kind of interest in supporting or improving early care and learning in their communities. The goal of the fellowship was really twofold. One was to inform fellows about the collective's work and purpose, the larger collective, and also to seed the ground for the collective's growth over time. So we recruited from, I think it was 49 states and DC for this first cohort. The other main goal was to provide good foundational information about early learning and common issues at the national, state, and local level in early childhood. So our fellows met virtually several times, but they also met early on in person at our Early Childhood Leadership Summit. That's an annual event that brings together state teams from all 50 states and DC. We were fortunate to have Angela actually come and speak from professional perspectives. Very grateful for that. We had speakers from a number of the other organizations as well. So this event brought our fellows together and provided opportunities for them to learn about things like, the brain science of early childhood, children's earliest environments. We also talked about the economic or business case for early childhood, and also try to delve into some local issues as well. Like we had a panel on how zoning issues affect childcare facilities in local municipalities. So the fellows were able to learn a lot from those sessions, and then following the summit, we touched base with them several more times just to hear how that learning was informing their focus and their work. We were really excited to hear them talk about how their focus had really deepened and expanded. They talked a lot about public-private partnerships to support early learning at the local level. They had lots of questions about how other communities have done this same work. So, I think one of the big advantages for the fellows is just that peer-to-peer connection. And certainly as the collective grows over time and expands into other communities, they'll be greeted there by local leaders who, have already received this foundational knowledge and gotten a start in their communities. So we're just really proud of that and happy to be working with our national partners to continue to move this work forward.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Yeah, as you mentioned, I was so honored and it was such an amazing experience to be at that summit, to be a provider and see that space of all these elected officials from across the country coming into that space to talk about us, right? And including us. It was just such an amazing experience. And I'm very thankful to have been included in that. Next, last but not least, is my co-chair from the steering committee of ELN, is Ms. Amalia.
Yeah, Angela. So Unidos US, we're the nation's largest Hispanic civil rights organization, as you heard earlier from Sarah, and our mission is to build a stronger America by creating opportunities for Latinos. Our early childhood education goal is to increase affordable, high quality, and culturally responsive early childhood education opportunities so that all Latino children are prepared to enter kindergarten ready. As part of the ELN Collective, Unidos US has been focused on developing the multilingual and fatherhood initiatives, which really aim to enhance the capacity of home visiting programs to support culturally and linguistically diverse families, fostering early learning and school readiness, again, to be able to achieve that goal of having Latino children be prepared for kindergarten. And we know that home visiting programs offer crucial support for Latino families. They provide guidance on child development and health in the comfort of their own homes. And we know from existing research that families who participate in evidence-based home visiting programs experience improvements in parenting skills. But we also wanted to dig a little bit deeper and expand on that research and hear directly from home visitors themselves about both their experiences, but also any formal training that they may have had in preparation to support dual language development and also father engagement. And so Unidos, we collaborated with two of our partners that are part of the collective, specifically Save the Children and Start Early, to conduct both quantitative and qualitative research. And this was done through a combination of a national survey, which our partners helped to disseminate to their home visiting networks. And we were able to attain over 100 responses from home visitors through that survey. And then we were also able to conduct individual interviews with 21 home visitors. I will note that this work would not have been possible, both developing the survey instrument and conducting the individual interviews, without the support of one of our local leaders who serves on the steering committee, Amanda Guajardo. We were able to bring her on as a consultant. She has rich and deep experience in home visiting programs, and so she was able to work with us to develop those surveys and interviews. And one of the findings from that research that we were able to conduct was that home visitors often lack access to both training and resources tailored to the needs of culturally and linguistically diverse families. And so to address this gap, we have developed materials and training modules for home visitors on those ends: dual language development, father engagement, and also early literacy. And so this work has really been informed by the experiences of home visitors who do that work on the ground with families. And also with family engagement staff across our networks, not only Unidos, but also with our partners in the ELN Collective. And I will say that the input of home visitors has been invaluable and has played a key role in both shaping and piloting the resources that we have developed, because we really want to make sure that we're addressing real needs that they have and that local leaders are elevating in the communities that we're all aiming to serve. And so the exciting part is that the training modules have been developed, and we are now in the phase of being able to pilot some of these trainings with some of our Unidos US affiliates in Oregon and Texas, for example. And so we're really excited to be able to continue to build on that work.
I love that. And shout out to Miss Amanda, Miss Amelia Mission, Miss Amanda. She is another local leader in this work, and she's just such an amazing human in general. I've had such a pleasure working with Miss Amanda, and I am particularly have a tie to Unido's work in many ways. I also offer home visiting and, you know, Latina and all that. So I appreciate all of that work that you guys do over there, Miss Amelia. As mentioned, you know, one of the reasons why I really jumped at the opportunity to join this group is the focus on bolstering the power and influence of local leaders, including parents and caregivers, program providers like me at the Toy Box, community leaders and local elected officials. Another thing that is uniquely powerful about this group is why. Why is the collective committed to centering the voices and perspectives of local leaders and local communities? Can you share some examples of what that looks like in this work? Ms. Tanja, could you maybe touch on why?
Yeah, thanks, Angela. It's so important. You know, one of the tenets of democracy is the voice of the people, that those voices are heard and that folks from all walks of life have a seat at decision-making tables. I think if we're honest and we look across like communities, there's work to be done here. And that's why this collective initiative is so timely and so right for this moment. You know, we say for the people, by the people, and this work is really making that happen. We know that local leaders and communities must be part of the solution. Unfortunately, you know, we don't see that. Marginalized groups are often recognized. Those who are closest to families and the needs of youngest children, especially those in underserved communities, must be at the table to help us develop systems and services that meet their needs. The collective is about doing that work. And as we do that work and shape where we want to go as a nation, we start with individual communities and that working together with local leaders to change and in some instances recreate systems that are responsive so that all young children and families have what they need to be successful. And there's no one better than the folks who receive services being at the table. And so that's why this work is critical. One great example that I can share from the NLC programmatic side of the work is the city of Los Angeles. Prior to the ELN Collective work, you know, our city teams are comprised of, you know, city leaders, community partners, but this work officially requires that any tables that we set, we have got to have parents, providers, and youth to be part of these strategic planning tables. So the city of Los Angeles, because they're so big, their team is structured into like two pillars. There's a workforce pillar and a facilities development pillar. They are led by folks at CBOs. The city relinquished, because this is the power shifting that our friends at CDF would be thrilled about. Like, you know, systems, we need to have different folks kind of lead. And so we have community organizations leading these two groups, but they're comprised. We have, for the first time, parents and providers and youth. They travel with us when we have our in-person meetings. They are part of the strategic planning tables, and they are on the virtual coaching calls. They are at the table with their senior city colleagues and community colleagues, and it's an equal playing field and all voices are equal. So we're just really excited to see that a city that can be viewed as like, you know, too big to get their hands around, that they've really opened up and embraced and really enjoying and really benefiting from having that voice at the table.
Yeah, no, I love that. I often refer to, before I stepped into all these spaces, my provider bubble, right? I didn't even know that these conversations were being had about me until I stepped out of my provider bubble and were welcomed into these spaces. You know, someone else that I think that don't get in these spaces enough that this group is bringing intentionally into the spaces is parents. You know, Miss Kimberly, can you touch on that with Save the Children?
Yeah, thanks, Angela. I think, you know, as Tanja said, we know that moms, dads, and other caregivers understand firsthand the value of quality childhood education, and they're the best advocates for their children and for the programs that serve the children in their communities, which is why Save the Children has invested in our family engagement program. This program is providing the advocacy and leadership training to ensure parents have the skills they need to raise their voices for their children, and also understand the power they hold to be able to do that. After receiving the training, then these advocates then work to mobilize other families in their communities, to educate decision makers about the public about the importance of investing in early learning. This organizing is different from other organizing. It's really hyper local. It has to be in community, community to community, individual to individual, and responsive to the unique resources in those communities, tailored to meet parents where they're at and to develop strong local leadership. In one of the states where we're working, one of the trainings we provide is a crafting your message. It's the first step. Like, how do you craft your message to be able to tell your story to the public, to decision makers, and make an ask for change? We were doing some work in a state and asked one of our parent advocates to share her story that she had developed through the training. And she joined a legislative breakfast that was hosted by Save the Children. And in that breakfast, for the first time, she stepped into the state capitol, had never been there, and shared her personal experience to 17 lawmakers about the importance and power of early childhood programs that they had had on her and her family and her children. That was just the start for her, right? Like, it was like, oh my goodness, I can do this. I have this. Like, I've got, people are listening to me. And then she wanted to share more. So then, working with staff, she worked on crafting a letter to the editor that she could share, and has continued in this space of engaging other parents. It's the first step, but we need to first meet the parents where they are. We need to provide them the training and then the opportunities to step into that space, because we know they are the best advocates for these programs that we all care so deeply about.
Yes, no, it's been a pleasure to host many of those family advocacy groups at my programs. And so I've seen firsthand the empowerment of my parents and what that looks like. CDF is all about empowering local voices. So, Ms. Sherry, what does that look like in your work there at CDF?
Yeah, I think it looks a lot like what we talked about, but really we have several elements in which we engage not just parents and caregivers, which are important, but I think I would get a slap on the hand that I don't mention the youth and the children that we center in the work that we do. And our work is really built in our power building continuum, which many on this call have seen and we can share, but really, and that starts at our president and CEO, Dr. Starsky Wilson, often says, if the problems we're working on don't start at Big Mama or Abuelito's table, we're not working on the right problems. And so really finding that space to engage with them. And many of our programs have that element where we're constantly engaging with parents and caregivers, as we talked about, but also children in their space. I'm thinking about our freedom schools, which is a part of it, goes K through 12, but really thinking about how we're engaging parents in that space who have younger children, who are talking about what it means for them to be able to work on these issues and what it means and what it's making it hard for them to engage, whether it's in early, not having access to quality early childhood for their younger children, and being able to know that they're in safe environments where they're learning, where we're making the connection between sort of these brains that are forming to getting them ready to join, to go to school and be able to actively engage and be able to develop. So really having those listening sessions and really helping them think about how they analyze the power and the place where they are. A lot of these conversations, we don't talk about power. And that's such an important piece of letting local leaders, parents, caregivers, like I said, young people understanding how they analyze power and talk about it. We talk about inclusion, but if you don't have power as a part of inclusion, you just have people sitting at the table listening. There's a saying, if you're not on the menu, if you're not at the table with power, you're sort of on the menu to be served. And that's a really important piece to think about here in how we engage and making sure that we are engaging, constantly going back. Are the points of intervention that we're talking about the ones that are actually working? Are they having unintended consequences for you? You thought this was a good idea, but it's actually not doing what it's supposed to do. How do we go back and fix that? So I think it's important that we constantly go back at each step as we're identifying problems, as we're offering programs and solutions, and also as we're offering policy. So that's an important piece of the work and how we're approaching this work to really build the systems that we want to talk about and have.
Yeah, no, I love that, right? As a local leader, I do often get asked to participate in many listening sessions, right? And they want, but I think the biggest part is seeing what you said actually influencing the work is what's different. It's
And
what's,
going back and knowing, like, and coming back to you and saying, thank you for
yeah.
participating. This is what we took from this. This is sort of what we're working on and how we're doing this. This is what we couldn't do because of this. And I think that that's a really important piece here, and really making sure that we're constantly going back and engaging.
Absolutely. And you get more buy-in that way, right? Like they keep coming back also because you keep coming back and they feel heard and seen in these spaces. You know, one of the things that I've learned in a lot of this is how important partnership is between elected officials and providers and parents and all of that, right? So Ms. Kelly, that's where you work a lot in. Can you share how you focus local leaders in that?
Yeah, thank you, Angela. Sure. And I was listening to both Sherry and Kimberly and thinking about how, local elected leaders really have opportunities to address issues that are brought forward by parents and community members and advocates. Local leaders hold that local context. They hold those stories. And sometimes the innovations or the solutions that are brought forward at a local level end up being scalable or ideas that can inspire larger change in a community. So one of the things that the Early Learning Nation Policy Fellowship did was connect our local leaders to state leaders as well. So during the summit, I mentioned there were state teams and our local leaders joined those state teams. They had opportunities there to connect with folks who are working on early childhood in the state context, in those, where those communities exist. I think connection generally is essential to sharing power. And I would also say, one other place that I've seen connection be really powerful in this work is just the peer-to-peer learning that's happening between local leaders across the country. It's really cool to get on a call with them and hear them say, I didn't know that other people were struggling with the same thing or how they were dealing with it. And just to be able to bring information and resources and let them hear from one another and, regional and local experts, I really think empowers them to take those stories that they're hearing, face those needs that their community has, and move the work forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I loved being able to go into these spaces and see other people from my state, right? Other people from New Mexico, and they're there and they're having these amazing conversations about our communities. So yes, I love that about this group. We're really bringing local areas from all over, from villages and towns, that nobody, the Verinos here in my community. So it's amazing to see. Ms. Chantal, what about Start Early? How are you guys focusing local leader voices in your approach?
Yeah, I mean, elevating family and community voice is central to all of our offerings. And as we, have like the other partners have deep experience in communities, we know that this is sometimes easier said than done, right? And so part of what we offer, through our consulting services, but also through our family-centered design program is some concrete tools and strategies that can help local leaders work with families to kind of move beyond the listening sessions to the co-creation and the co-design with communities and families. And we always look, for innovations inside our space, but then also outside our space. And so part of what we try to do is look at the social innovation space and, different strategies from human-centered design to liberation design that we can pull in to equip leaders with and local families and communities. And so currently we're working with First Five Fresno in California, and then also across 4 counties in Oregon, via a partnership with the Northwest Regional Education Services District in Oregon. And this is just an example of how we think about it is, what are the actual things when, when push comes to shove and you have to actually start building the systems locally, how do you, really take what you're hearing from families and help establish the relationships for long-term success in the community through true partnership and co-design.
I love that long-term success, right? Miss Megan shared earlier that this is really, this is new to some of our listeners. It was newer to me, when I joined last year, but this has been 10 years in the making. This has been an investment from all of you. And so I know you've been plotting and planning this for a long time, and we officially hosted the public launch last fall. That was super exciting. But can you tell us a little bit about that journey and where the collective is operating now and what the plans are for onboarding new communities and where this powerful collective effort stands today? Maybe Miss Esther, could you start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. At CSSP, we've been deeply involved in shaping and supporting the collective's journey as we try to build an early learning nation. Right now, we're actively working with 5 community teams across the country, helping them build coalitions, utilize the building blocks framework, and develop action plans. One of the biggest lessons from this first phase has been the need for flexibility. Communities are at different stages in their early learning work, and we adjusted our approach to meet them where they're at, while helping them push onward. We've also seen local leaders having to adjust their plans and priorities due to the rapidly changing funding and policy landscape right now. And we recognize that CSSP and all of the collectives approach needs to be flexible so that we can make the best decisions and support communities in real time. Looking ahead, I would say our goal is to be more and more intentional in how we're layering and sequencing supports for communities and working with our partners in the collective so that a community that's already working with CSSP or another partner could join another programmatic offering. We're also trying to make sure that those connections are happening so the communities that are working with other partners can join our community cohorts or can help us nominate parents to be a part of our parent leadership cohorts. I could provide a clear example of sort of this flexibility in action, and it's kind of been CSSP's work through the early learning community cohorts with the Early Learning Coalition of Grays Harbor County in Washington State. With our core design approach to the cohort, we've supported them in being responsive to local needs. They strategically have been engaging city officials and non-English speaking families in their planning process, and that came after just taking some time to reassess what the community needs were and how we could lend a hand there. So by providing additional time and sort of tailoring our support, the Early Learning Coalition was able to expand their stakeholder group. At this point, they've been able to bring in 2 mayors and are connecting their efforts to a federal early childhood health grant in their state. This connection, I think, is just a significant example of how we can help communities strengthen their overall impact. The Early Learning Coalition of Grays Harbor County went on ahead to complete CSSP's community cohort, and then they received funding from the local action fund. And now they're in the process of gathering assessments and building an early learning action plan. Ultimately, I would say this work is just more than just increasing the number of participating communities. It is about building long-term capacity for leadership at the local level. And as we move forward, we're committed to deepening our relationship with local leaders and supporting them, communities both from previous cohorts and new cohorts, as they work in ways to transform their early childhood systems in ways that are sustainable and community driven. And one last point I'll add is that as we're looking towards the future for future cohorts, we want to make sure that we're connecting community teams to the broad range of national partners offerings, including tailored technical assistance and capacity building, as all the national partners have different areas of expertise.
Yeah, I love that. As we build, right, we're cohesively leaving this impact to allow these communities to function on a higher level around young children. It's so exciting to hear. I know CDF is also working on recruiting more leaders. Ms. Sherry, would you like to share a little bit about that?
Sure, I'll be quick. I want to look at the time and get us to questions and answers. Yeah, we're also increasing our building more cohorts, increasing local leaders to build more cohorts, and building state teams with the goal of connecting with our partners on this call to make sure that we're connecting our leaders with the leaders that they're building in places so that we're building a network in a state to move to action. I think a long-term goal of this obviously is to bring all the people who are now part of the ELN collective together at some point to think about how we're sharing lessons learned, how we're making connections in these places so that we are building community cohorts, community action teams across the organizations and across the learnings. And as Esther said, really thinking about how we can say to folks who are engaging in our work, in our offering, hey, now that you've done this, you might want to now think about how you're connecting to what's happening at Start Early, or how you want to, you're in a rural community, how are you connecting with SAVE's rural groups, those kinds of things. That's one of the benefits and powers of being a part of this collective, is that we know this is going on. If they're going to how we're connecting people in these places, you want to talk to your local leaders who are interested in doing this. We've got some connections at NLC and the HUD Institute of people who are engaged in this and really want to work, and how we're making those connections.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that, the thing I love most, right, is everything kind of ties together, because Ms. Chateau, when you're talking about that, at Start Early, we start talking about that map, the community, the map making. So how does that play into all this?
Yeah, I mean, I want to reinforce what Sherry said. Like, one of the strengths of this collective is that we're able to do handoffs, from community to community. So there might be a community that's receiving sort of programmatic offerings from CDF, or the SAVE, or any one of the partners, and we know that if through that programming, or through their action plan, they have identified the need to better understand their systems, then they can come to Start Early, and we can engage in one of these comprehensive systems mapping programs. Or if there is, any particular local need that a community has identified through their work with our partners, Start Early has customized consulting that, is very flexible, and can be tailored to the specific needs of that community and those local leaders. So, we're relying on like passing the baton to each other, and, really strengthening our impact in the communities through this work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things that I know we are very intentional with is being inclusive. Ms. Amelia, how is that over there at Unity Those?
Sorry, took me a little bit to unmute. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, just addressing community needs. So Unidos US, we have an affiliate network of about 300 community-based organizations. So we work hand in hand with community partners on the ground, and about 50 of them provide early learning support to families with young children. So for us, the work is very much centered and rooted in communities, and in supporting the folks on the ground who are, providing services and advocacy support to the families. So that's very much part of our DNA in our current work, and also going forward, right, as we look to scale the work that we have built as part of the ELN Collective, making sure that we are also staying true to our maintaining the focus on the families that we serve, and then supporting the community-based organizations who are doing this work day in and day out.
And no, I love that. And as we sit here and we talk about the future of ELN, I get so excited, but we know this work is really only possible because of generosity and investment from funders. The Bezos Family Foundation has generously invested in the formation and the launch of this collective effort. I understand you're seeking, Ms. Megan, additional investments from other funders to sustain and grow this effort. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those opportunities and how funders listening today can get involved?
I do want to say this work would not be possible without the efforts of these 7 incredible organizations. Thank you to the campaign for also hosting this. Angela, you're an amazing moderator. You're hired.
Thank you.
So I think, I really hope that the conversation today demonstrated that this work is designed to do what no single organization could do on their own. And I think in that way, this work is also bigger than what philanthropic entity can responsibly steward on its own as well. The first phase has been about creating the structure and the foundation to grow. You heard a little bit about that, but it's also been about building the trust and the relationships that are essential for growth. So where we are today is a remarkable milestone in what we see as longer term work, and a longer term vision where one day in communities across the country in every state, you have local leaders that are united, they are equipped, and much more powerful and influential champions for the kinds of experiences that young children and families need to thrive. We know that local leaders are the key to creating an early learning nation, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, and community by community. And there's a plan to get there. And we're just out of this first phase, but it will require additional voices and investment to get there. So we at BFF are already looking to reinvest in the next phase that will start in the summer. And we intend to offer a financial incentive so that when others join us, it will unlock additional support from the foundation. Finally, I would just note that if you are in a coalition in one of the 15 priority states, connect in, take advantage of the free resources. Those connections are really vital to the strength of this work. The many months, if not years of planning have sparked such an incredible response in the first 18-month phase. And I just can't help but think about and be so energized about what will happen if we keep at it.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree more, Miss Megan. As someone who is seeing this work in my community, it's so exciting to see, and the possibilities of this group are just endless, and so I know that the Grade Level Reading Network invited us today, and we appreciate being in this space. I know you guys are comprised of over 350 community coalitions stretching across 46 states. My goodness, U.S. district and territories. Each of these communities has local funders supporting the work on the ground. ELN Collective partners that are on the panel today, for those funders in these states that we're working in, what is the opportunity for providing support that could bring our unique, powerful approach into their communities? If anyone just wants to come off mute.
Yeah, I will just say that this is an open invitation, right? I think the website for the ELN Collective has been shared. That is really a hub where you can find the offerings that the national partners have shared today, just as a starting point to be able to get connected. I know that we'll also have an opportunity. Hopefully you had an opportunity to learn from each of us how we're working together, right, to really reach maximum impact to drive towards the change that we want to see, not just in practice and programs, but really to create that change that needs to happen at the systems level, because we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we are changing systems for the benefit of families with young children, and particularly at the community level, right? And facilitating the support that communities, many of whom are represented on this call, have the tools, the resources, and the support that you all need, that we can help facilitate in the places where we sit, to make that work a little easier for you all, and really to join us in being part of the collective.
No, absolutely. No, just speaking from a local leader in this space, I've been able to see how intentional this group is as being a collective in these spaces and cohesively approaching this, centering it around people like me, that work with these children every day. They are intentional with speaking to my families. They're intentional with creating that within my community, allowing us to be empowered within ourselves. Because we all know that our children are often most impacted by the people that they work with every day. So when we feel empowered, we in turn empower the children in our communities. So when I think about, the opportunities for people that are already providing support, I think about, again, that cohesive approach, being able to do something together that no individual can do alone. It's just exciting work. I want to thank everybody for allowing me to carry on this conversation with you guys today. It is, I tell you, I get so inspired and I'm just like, okay, let's go do it. Let's go fix everything, guys. But we know that that is a long-term goal to really have this lasting impression on families and children and community. And so I value each one of your investments in time and efforts. And I appreciate this space. Ms. Sarah, I know we have a Q&A coming next, so I'm going to pass that over to you. And I thank you guys for your time.
Well, first of all, I'm just going to say, Angela, allowing you to moderate this conversation, we're going to be bringing you back for all of our conversations that are focused on early childhood, because it is really challenging, especially when there's so many panelists, and you have just been a rock star throughout. So huge thank you to you. But wanted to get into some of the questions that we've heard from the folks in the audience. And a couple have been about different kinds of direct service and programs that might be available. How much does this program cost in this community, and different things like that. And I know that that's not really what the ELN Collective is about. So I'd like to invite somebody on the panel to kind of share a little bit of insights about the systems change approach behind the work of the ELN Collective, and how we're trying to really change, and also please fill out the engagement poll when you see that pop up on your screen, but how we are trying to change systems and make sure that communities and states have the resources that families and kids need so that they can thrive. Would anyone like to chime in on that?
Sure, I'll jump in because I'm always willing to take a leap. I think part of it is really developing a policy agenda and policy action plan with folks. And for CDFs, I think all the people on this, most of the organizations on this call have a policy agenda around something in the early learning space, and really trying to see how the work that we're doing is educating and working with local leaders to be able to help them think about how they're going to do that, and what systems they want to be built. And our policy agenda, for example, really does come from these conversations with parents and young people about what systems they need to make the work happen. So really getting them to understand where the points of lever, where decisions get made, and then providing the opportunity for them to go and act on that. Whether it's from, I'm speaking a little CDF, but also thinking about how we build this, providing the opportunities for, days on hills or state capitals, where we do with our freedom schools, we do a national day of social action, which actually brings the scholars, which is what we call the students, their parents and providers, to places to talk about these issues, that kind of thing. So I think that is really the helping them develop those tools, and then also providing opportunity for them to engage with whether it's people, federal leaders or state leaders or local leaders, right? Providing that entree into it, and understanding our role as liberated gatekeepers, right, on some level, because we are in the everyday, the advocacy piece of it, and thinking about that. But we don't have to be the experts all the time, because we're actually not the experts on their experience. They are. So how are we providing them with the opportunity to be able to engage that? I imagine SCAN does a lot of that as well, and other Unidos does that as well, and other people on the call. But those are really key places in thinking about what the system looks like that will be responsive to the needs. And then going back to ask and make sure we're not just rebuilding the system with different coloring, right? Like, that's why we have to go back and ask, is the system actually now doing what we said it was going to do? Or is it just, found a different way to do something wrong? So it's really about thinking about those root causes and engaging there.
I love that. And that's the second time or third time that you've mentioned going back and asking, because it's one thing to have the conversation and try to do the work, but really making sure and checking in and on that. Anything that anyone else would like to add to that?
Yeah, just to build on that, right? As Sherry mentioned, if as we are driving towards affecting systems change, right? And we have, developed a lot of the groundwork for that, working together over the last year or so. It's to Sherry's point, right? Some of our individual organizations do have our own policy agendas, right? So as we look ahead to the next phase of the work, thinking about how we can bring that work together to develop, hopefully, like policy principles framework for the collective, right? So that we're not individually doing our own advocacy efforts, right? But is there an umbrella framework that we can get behind that's also informed by local leaders on the ground and in their communities to make sure that any policy principles or framework that the ELN may come up with is actually responsive to and informed by local voices. So that's something that I hope we work towards in the next phase that I think many of us are interested in.
And Sarah, I think just chiming in on that, I think that one of the challenges, and when I talked about the family engagement program being hyper local, we know that each community, there are similarities to the problems and the challenges they're facing, but we also do know there are different challenges. In some places it may be access, in some places it's affordability, in some places it's both. And so having that lens and really leaning in and learning from the local communities and the local leaders, the providers, the parents, the legislator, all those individuals to really understand what the local needs are. There may be various local needs within a state. We want to bring the states together. I know there's a question about state engagement versus local. We want that, but we also know states are very diverse. There are urban, there's rural, there's suburban, there's all these different, and there's different needs for those communities. So again, really leaning in to the leaders in those communities to hear from them about their needs, and then expanding that out and hopefully being able to create not just the community base, but then also in the state base into a national early learning nation is what we're striving for eventually. But it's got to start local first.
Mm-hmm. And Tanja, I see that you've unmuted, so I'm going to invite you to share. But I also wanted to share another question that kind of builds on that one, and maybe you can reply to that as you're responding to the previous one, Tanja. But are there any kind of commonalities or themes that you're seeing across maybe communities in a particular state or communities across the country, recognizing, as you're saying, Kimberly, that there's so many unique aspects, different size, different, and even when it's a lot of the similarity, they look similar on paper, there's differences in terms of what the needs and opportunities and assets are. So maybe we could weave that in as well. But Tanja, what would you add?
Yeah, no, I mean, some of those themes that's, I think one thing that we see common across our networks are like the issues around housing and mental well-being is another issue that we're seeing a lot. And I think, what's so beautiful about this collective, I got to give a shout out to the building blocks, the framework. It's such a great organizing tool. And all of these members of the ELN Collective community are working on strategic plans, and it really helps centers community to how to think about how those systems, whether it's housing, transportation, mental health, are being responsive to the needs of families in their community, and having our communities being those labs of innovation where we can kind of test out how community voice and those with lived experiences can really provide the feedback on what's needed, because I think we can all agree those systems have not been working for folks. In this environment now, I think we're ready for some really honest conversations about what do we build back better and what does that look like. And so I think our communities can serve as the labs of innovation where local leaders can kind of be the touch points for experimentation and innovation. And that can kind of funnel up to our state leaders having Hunt at the table, their great connections to state leaders and local leaders, having those strategic conversations about what works best for their communities and their states is I think, very powerful moment.
Very powerful moment. And this is the end of our 90 minutes of powerful moments with you all. And I am so sad about that. But I know that some of you even have to run and start something in the next 60 seconds. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists, our amazing moderator, Angela Garcia, for leading us through this conversation, to Megan Wyatt for kind of helping to bring these national leaders together and spark this conversation and launch the Early Learning Nation Collective. I hope all of the funders that are listening in see this as an amazing opportunity for you to work to bring this work into your states or your communities, or invest in the Early Learning Nation Collective as a infrastructure and backbone to support work across the country. I'm going to bring up the slides in just a second to talk about what we have coming down the pike for those of you who might want to join us this afternoon. We've got another webinar starting at 3 p.m. Eastern time, or actually, no, we'll look next month. Okay, all right. Next month we have another funder to funder conversation that I hope you'll join us for, that's focused on early numeracy and math skills, sponsored by the Heising-Simons Foundation, but looking at how it is working in partnership with local funders and state and regional funders to bring together and support early math programs and efforts, evaluate impact and scale in communities. So that's next month, April 15th, Tax Day. It's an easy way to remember. And then today, we are having another one of our Decoding NAEP sessions, this time hearing the perspectives from state chiefs, a panel of 5 different state chiefs who will be sharing their reflections on the data, what they see as working that might possibly be masked by the sampling data from across their state, and what are their plans moving forward to address the gaps that we've seen. Next week, we've got a double header, starting off with a Crucible Practice Salon looking at Georgia and some incredible work that they've done around summer learning programs using ESSER dollars, and what are their plans to moving forward without those funds. In the afternoon, we'll be kicking off another little mini series of conversations asking the question, more hopeful futures or children as collateral damage, with this first session looking at the proposed cuts and shifts to the U.S. Department of Education and the impact that that might have on children who are receiving supports either as English language learners, attending schools with high numbers of low-income children, and children with disabilities who are served at IDEA. The following week, we'll kick off April with a session asking the same question, but this time looking at the impact of accelerated deportation on children, their families, their schools, their mental health, and their well-being. So hope that you will all join us for all of those. I've just dropped a link in the chat for those sessions. But again, huge thank you to our panelists, huge thank you to all of those who joined in, and really appreciate your engagement and support.